Saints fans, your team has got a win streak. Yes, they plugged a couple together. They are over 500. And regardless of what happens with the other games around the league, the New Orleans Saints have rose victorious. The Atlanta Falcons are currently winning against the Minnesota Vikings without Kirk Cousins, 28-24. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trying to drive against the Houston Texans, where they're currently trailing. But at the end of the day, the only thing that truly matters is that your New Orleans Saints are victors. They won a tough-fought 24-17 win. An ugly win is better than a pretty loss. Defense steps up here in the second half, makes it happen. Offense finds a little bit of life, decides to go real conservative at the end. Felt real crazy, but a win is a win. They played it tough. And, yeah, this is what you had to do. If you lose this game, you have severe worries. Doesn't matter how you win. If you beat this team, if you win this game, you're happy. Things look good. And, oh, by the way, for the statisticians out there, the New Orleans Saints are now 18-1 when Taysom Hill himself runs for at least 7 carries. We'll get some hoot-ass those who are in the chat early on. Appreciate all y'all being here. Chris Morlock, Disturbed, 1117. Rainy, TJ Twigger, 007. Kamani W. Nikki DeFish, Jerry, G in the house, Brandon Ground, Maya, Cam B, Creo King, Petty Capital, Kevin, Gerald Stevenson, Travis, Troy Jefferson, DJ Twigger, yeah, buddy, 007, Kelly Ball, Matthew Hosner, and everybody else. Hoot-at to you. Welcome into the recap edition of the New Orleans Saints against the Chicago Bears. Saints moving to 5-4 over the Bears, who will now move to what, 2-6, right? 2-7, something like that. Let's start with what we usually do. I'm going to cut it short and go with halves instead of quarters. First half of the New Orleans Saints, we saw some good movement here. Derek Carr actually throws 2 touchdown passes. Good to see Chris Olave getting some early usage. Chris Olave in the first half had 4 targets, 3 receptions for 33 yards. 1 for 14. Of course, a tutty. Taysom Hill had a touchdown reception in this game as well in the first quarter. And the offense did seem to find a little bit of life in what for a little bit feared like it was going to be a shootout. Derek Carr finished in the first half on 79 completion percentage, only 137 yards. But again, that was a lot of ball control offense being played here, where the New Orleans Saints had great position throughout the game. Cameron Jordan registered a sack, very critical sack early on, that ended up becoming a big thing. And here are some numbers for the first half, not including the second half. But in the first half, the New Orleans Saints were 2 for 2 in the red zone. However, the defense allowed the Bears to be 2 for 3 in the red zone in the first half. New Orleans Saints offense was 6 for 7 on third down. That was fantastic. You would love to see that type of continue. But here's a big one. 7.4. Once you remember that number, that's what the Bears were averaging per play in the first half. Ended up being pretty critical. Now let's talk about how the numbers finished if you're a New Orleans Saints fan. Whoa, my goodness, woo. First off, missed kicks from both kickers definitely put a little bit of a swing on it. But let's talk about the offensive numbers. Saints offense got a little bit of a slug into that second half. They only go 7 for 14, so they complete 1 third down in that second half and 3 for 5 in the red zone. I do want to be very clear, though, that number is slightly skewed because that final drive is going to count as a red zone drive, even though they were clearly trying to running out the clock and not trying to win. Also, for those keeping score, the Minnesota Vikings have just taken the lead over the Atlanta Falcons with 22 seconds left. If that score holds true, 31-28, New Orleans Saints will be in sole possession of first place, at least for this week. But New Orleans Saints offense only able to complete 1 third down in the second half, something they've got to simply work on doing. They've got to get better at that. And then obviously the Blake Groupie kick plays into that a little bit as well. The Saints offense definitely got more conservative as they got into the second half, something that we want to see Pete Carmichael work on. Stop trying to ground out every game, because the defense kept rewarding this offense with fantastic field position that was not always capitalized on. You had 2 interceptions by Paulson Adebo, plus a forced fumble and a fumble recovery and tackles. Let's actually click over the defensive side. But before I do that, I want you to see one quick number, chat, 5.8. So they did manage to bring down that Bears per play down quite a bit. Now, I talked about this in the pregame. The best way to beat this team was to force it into the hands of the young quarterback. Look, the running quarterback thing is still hurting this team. They're still struggling with that, and I'm not denying it. But I will add one little caveat. Dennis Allen is arguably the best defensive coordinator in the entire league when it comes to adjustments in the second half. I want to give him credit on that. I think there's absolutely no reason why this Chicago Bears team should have walked down the field as they did multiple times in the first half. But I do think some flowers need to be given to Dennis Allen in terms of his halftime adjustments and how they stymied this Chicago team. How did they stymie them, by the way? You're curious how that actually happened. I want to go back to those numbers. Rushing numbers specifically. 6 first downs in rushing for the Bears to start this game, but 105 yards rushing in the first half for 5.3 yards per carry. That was the first half numbers. Now look how it ends up finishing with rushing. 156. So you gave up 105 in the first half and then only 49 in the second half. Tackles for loss, obviously fantastic. We love to see tackles for loss with some really big plays. Shout out Carl Granderson, who doesn't register a sack this game, does get some pressure and made some great plays on defense. And another big key is the Saints simply stopped allowing them to convert on third down and in the red zone. The Bears end up finishing 2 for 4 in the red zone. Both their red zone successes coming in the very beginning of the game. I do have a couple of big gripes, though. I feel like the Saints in the end of the first quarter had missed opportunities with those final 40 seconds to get into field goal range. I hate that we had double doinks. We had Santos have a doink. We had Blake Grupe have a doink, and that was painful. And I also want to give credit to a guy that I've been very hard on this year. With shortened field position, he did a really good job, Lou Hedley, at downing the ball inside the 15. So I'm going to always try to give guys credit when I believe they deserve credit. I'm always going to be critical when I believe guys deserve to be critical. Chris Olave, for example, having another drop pass today is a negative, but I think he well made up for it by his other plays. Lou Hedley today had a good day. His stats won't show great averages, but he did a really good job with positional coffin cornering punting, and I think that deserves some level of recognition. Defensively, you want to put these stats on the board. Demario Davis is actually going to lead your team in tackles, but Paulson Adebo with 7 tackles, 3 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 2 interceptions. I just did a film study on Paulson Adebo, and I'm not going to lie to you, Saints fans, here in the quick reaction post-game. I'm probably going to give you another one this week. You're going to have back-to-back Paulson Adebo film studies, and can you blame me? If you can, well, I don't really know what to tell you. It is what it is. And just keeping up on score while we're doing this live, Tampa Bay has scored a touchdown against Houston, taking the lead 37-33 with 46 seconds remaining. So Tampa, if they win, will move to 4-4. The New Orleans Saints are now 5-4. If Atlanta loses, the New Orleans Saints will be in control of the division. We'll see if that continues to be a thing. But the big thing that won this game is obviously turnovers. The New Orleans Saints forced several. Demario Davis forcing a critical sack fumble at the end of the game. 3 interceptions. Those 4 turnovers are definitely, or I'm sorry, 5 turnovers are definitely what causes this game to flow in the way that it does. The Saints offense sputtering a little bit in the second half, but I also will go ahead and just say something real quick. I'm actually kind of okay with that. Now, don't take that as me saying I'm okay with the Saints offense turning anemic. It's more of who should be winning a game for the New Orleans Saints in 2023? The defense. And that's exactly what they did. This is the type of game that the New Orleans Saints need to win. By the way, it is official. The Atlanta Falcons have lost to the Minnesota Vikings. Thus, the New Orleans Saints are in first place of the NFC South, at least as of Week 9. The New Orleans Saints are now in first place by themselves. Even with a win, Tampa cannot overtake them because they have had their bye week already. So I am okay with a defense winning the game. Would I like to see better things by the offense? Absolutely. Derek Carr finishes the day 25 of 34 for 73.5%, 211 yards, and 2 TDs. But the key for me is no mistakes, no sacks. Taysom Hill also threw a touchdown pass to Juwan Johnson. Good to see Juwan Johnson getting some activity here today. That was big for me. So am I wanting more from the offense? Absolutely. I'll never sit here and tell you that I want the offense to be anemic. But I will say, when it comes down to it, in 2023, who should be winning the games? Who is the best side of the field? It is the defense. And in today's game, the defense made it happen, came in when they needed it to happen. So I appreciate Derek Carr getting the ball out quickly, not throwing in any situations. And honestly, I can't say a single Derek Carr ball was a turnover-worthy throw, because those are things, right? There are times when a quarterback throws a ball he shouldn't, and it's a turnover-worthy throw. And I don't think he threw any of those. The worst throw by Derek Carr was on a 3rd and 4 in the first half, where the New Orleans Saints decided on 3rd and 4 that they were going to take another deep shot, this time to Chris Olave on the right side. One, I don't think that Chris Olave is showing the play strength to be given that type of a shot. And two, Derek Carr's ball wasn't even catchable anyway, so it honest to God doesn't matter. And it could have been thrown potentially. It truly could have potentially been thrown badly because he saw that Chris Olave had no separation. I'm not really sure. But either way, that was probably Derek Carr's worst throw of the game. New Orleans offense looked really good in the first half. Then they got very conservative in the second half. You can tell by the style. If you actually pull up the playlist, which I can for y'all right here, and if we scroll on down to the fourth quarter, you'll notice the style of offense by New Orleans drastically shifted. The style of what they wanted to do definitely became very much a run-focused, oriented team to grind down clock. That doesn't mean they weren't trying to score the football. That's not the argument I'm trying to make. But I am trying to say that if you look in that fourth quarter, this is not a team that was doing the same level of aggression that they were showing before. You saw a lot more Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill is a grinded out style of game. So none of this is to say that the Saints offense deserves, slack. I do want the offense to do better. I think it sucks that Michael Thomas did not receive a single reception today, only one target, and that was a target that ended up being a pass interference call. But I do think that they did what needed to be done to win. And the big, obviously, MVP of the game has got to go to Paulson Adebo. And I think Demario Davis deserves to get a little bit of love there as well, recording a sack fumble. Cameron Jordan getting a very critical sack. And honestly, a couple of critical penalties were called thanks to Cameron Jordan. Lots of penalties. And in this game, if you want to give credit to the offense, this is a much cleaner game. Look at the penalty numbers here for New Orleans. 1 penalty, 5 yards to 8 penalties for the Bears. New Orleans played a much cleaner game than normal. And again, you're at the top of the offense. To give you a real quick idea of what's happening in Houston right now with 16 seconds left, they are 2nd and 10 on the Tampa Bay 41. They are out of timeouts, 16 seconds left, and they are trying to make a final push for the end zone. Again, regardless of whether they win or not, looks like they just made it down to the Tampa Bay 15 for a 26-yarder. So a little bit of a game going on right there if you're a fan of that. So we'll watch that down to the final second. But now let's go ahead and jump into the comment section and see what they say. D says, I'm still not satisfied. This team shouldn't even have been able to play with us. We should have put this team away, and we couldn't do it. Well, I mean, to a degree, you're right. I like to fall back on this, and I do this for wins or losses any given Sunday, right? The New Orleans Saints have clearly shown that they struggle against quarterbacks who are going to be mobile. Dennis Allen has got to do something to make that happen. But at the end of the day, a win is a win is a win. And the New Orleans Saints are a winning team right now. They're 5-4. They own the NFC South at the moment, where they're going into a game next week, not to try to look too far ahead, against the Minnesota Vikings team who is hurting. Hopefully they can take advantage of the Minnesota Vikings team that actually managed to do the New Orleans Saints a favor by beating the Atlanta Falcons. So all of these things are just things to keep in mind as we look at it as a whole. The truth is the New Orleans Saints do not look like a perfect team, but a win is a win. Time says we were losing ugly games. Now we're winning them. This is a massive need. I would say that the thing that reminds me the most and what I want to bring up is 2016. Remember 2016. The New Orleans Saints in 2016, it just felt like they found ways to lose football games. Remember, like whether it was special teams or turnovers, the 2016 team found ways to lose. Today, you saw a team find ways to win. By the way, for those watching live, it looks like C.J. Stroud has his 5th touchdown pass of the day, taking the lead for the Houston Texans, which would fall the Buccaneers to 3-5, thus even more solidifying the New Orleans Saints as first place in the NFC South. Can't wait to watch the highlight of that game after we finish up with the podcast. Now, if you're listening live, one, I appreciate you being here. Two, shout out to you. And also I want to say a big thank you because there have been a few people who've picked up the Who Dat Confessional shirt at our website, revdeuce.com, supporting the podcast and supporting your New Orleans Saints. Absolutely appreciate it. And a couple of you grabbed the hats. Want to see them in the stadiums, man. If you got them, take a picture. So we got the New Orleans Saints not winning a pretty game, but you'll take the game no matter what. Chris says, we do not need another kicker. He's still above average in the league. Who else is out there? No one better than him for sure. Let him grow into his shoes. I have to agree with Chris. Like, if we do the revisionist history, would I have kept Will Lutz? Sure, I would have kept Will Lutz. I said that. But at the same time, Blake Grupe is not exactly performing terrible. And his miss was it's a difficult kick, right? I think that I've been more willing to give Blake Grupe a little bit of slack than I have Lou Headley. But let me put it this way. Ending today, he's made 18 field goals on 22 attempts, which is around 80%. Is that mind-bogglingly good? No. He's a rookie kicker. He's making some kicks, and he also made a really critical 50-plus yarder. But here's the big thing for Grupe, right? If you are a fan or a disfan of Grupe, he is 10 of 11 from a field goal shot, 39 yards or shorter. The miss he had today was a longer shot. The make he had today was a longer shot. So he's only hitting about 80% of his kicks, but most of his kicks seem to be coming from deeper. The New Orleans Saints aren't giving him a lot of opportunities for those chip shots. He's 10 of 11 up close, right? Inside 40, he's 10 of 11. That's basically automatic. And honestly, before this game, he'd only missed 2 kicks inside of 50. So let Grupe continue to grow. Would I, at the time, have kept Will Lutz? Absolutely. But I don't think Blake Grupe is a problem here. And he's definitely a contributor to why the New Orleans Saints were able to win this game. Also, love some of the play designs by Pete Carmichael. I want to give him a little bit of flowers. I've been very critical on him, and I'm not arguing now that Pete Carmichael is a top-end play caller. That's not what I'm about to do. But what I am going to say is I appreciate some of the looks that we don't normally expect. For example, down in the red zone, when you had Colin Saunders, the binky package, putting him out there in a pass play. I love that. And that led to the touchdown pass on a Y leak play, which I believe the Y leak to Juwan Johnson was the always intended target. I love that design. I also love at the end of the game where they bring in Colin Saunders, put him in motion as a lead blocker to get the key first down, to end up resulting in running the clock out. And again, that does kind of skew your stats. I hate that that counts as a red zone stat because it makes the New Orleans Saints 3 for 5 in the red zone. Truly, they were 3 for 4 in the red zone. And if we're going to be critical on the Saints offense, we should be critical on that one drive. They did not cap into the end zone. And I also will say this is going to be something that a lot of people listening to this podcast probably don't like. You can comment after the show. I'm completely okay with it. I loved the aggressiveness of Dennis Allen, even though he could have taken a 2-score lead, going for it on that 4th down, even though they didn't get it. And they did not go for it cleanly, and that really annoyed me. I had no problem with quarterback sneaking it with Derek Carr on inches. Now, they did not execute that well, and there was a miscommunication on that snap, and they were not ready, right? Something clearly wasn't working right. I hate it. But I love the play call by Dennis Allen and being aggressive. I hate conservative coaching. I think conservative coaching loses you football games. It's my main issue with the Saints offense. In the second half, seems to have got much more conservative. That was a problem. But I actually love that call. I love what they choose. Now, do I agree with the execution? The execution was terrible. No, that was absolutely abysmal. Derek Carr actually went to the left A-gap when the clear hole was to the right A-gap. Had he fallen, if he just tripped to the right, he would have gotten the first down. But I love the call. Now, NTR says Taysom should have been in on that play. Here's why Taysom doesn't get on that play. Let me explain it to you, right? Let me explain it to you. Now, if you still want Taysom in that, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm going to explain to you why Taysom wasn't there. Because Taysom was not on the field at the time. If an offensive player is substituted, the officials stop the play and allow the defense to make a substitution. The New Orleans Saints liked that they had if I recall, was a nickel-style defense for the Bears on the field. Had they made a substitution to bring Taysom Hill in, the Chicago Bears defense would have been allowed to make a substitution as well. So the idea to quick sneak it with Carr was a great idea if they didn't execute it like a peewee team that had never had the play before. I don't have a problem with that as long as they execute it. But that's why you didn't have, Taysom Hill run on the field and do that, because that meant that Chicago would have had an opportunity to bring in everybody that weighs 400 pounds and try to stuff the interior gaps, which changes the dynamic of the play. You could do something else, of course, but that's why the quarterback sneak was Derek Carr, not Taysom Hill. Now, I would have to go back and watch it. This is me just kind of pulling it from memory. But Taysom Hill wasn't on the previous snap, to my knowledge. If he was, then that changes it. And if Taysom Hill was on the previous snap, then he absolutely should have been one quarterback sneaking it. But I don't remember him being there, which means it would have been a substitution thing, meaning that the Bears would have been allowed to substitute their defense. So that would be the explanation of that. But I, honest to God, do love the New Orleans Saints being aggressive there. I do appreciate Dennis Allen going for it on that fourth down. It didn't work. But I do think that aggression is what you need to be as a head coach. If you want to critique Dennis Allen, critique Dennis Allen. But I think it comes down to critiquing him in a way that I think is conducive to improvement. Last year, if y'all remember last year, we complained about this a lot. Dennis Allen was a very conservative head coach last year. Very conservative. Always punting. Never going for it on fourth down. Never taking a shot. He took a shot to try to solidify and win the game. If they complete that fourth down, nothing else, they're probably going to get better field goal position and they're going to eat up another minute or 2 o'clock. Right? That's good case scenario. Best case, they actually would have got a touchdown. So I love that idea. And I think that is actually a sign of good coaching. Going for it there is a good coach. Now, the execution problem, let's go ahead and put blame where that needs to go. Execution, I think, needs to go on Derek Carr. Execution needs to go on the offensive line because they were clearly out of sync. Execution, that was a problem. But I have no issue with DA calling that. And I believe DA being a better coach this year in terms of aggression is why this is a 5-4 team on top of the division. And we can argue, oh, the NFC South sucks. Oh, the Saints should have blown out the Bears. A lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas could have happened. End of the day, the New Orleans Saints won. And I will take a win over a loss every single Sunday. I don't care what day it is, even if it's Tuesday. I'll always take a win over a loss. Godfather, Deuce, the league is built and officiated to give offenses every advantage, and injuries have already affected our defense and secondary. I'd rather have a high-powered offense than a defense like ours. I will agree with Godfather that in today's modern NFL, it is very difficult to have success built how the Saints are built. And that's just a fact I will never try to deny. And I've said it before. I've actually said that it is much harder to have a head coach like a Dennis Allen and then find a great offensive coordinator to pair with him. The best teams in the league that consistently push for the Super Bowl are offensive juggernauts who have like a good defense, not great defense, right? That's typically what happens. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And while we're sitting here as Saints fans, we have to operate with what we have. And you know what we have? A great defense. And that defense really stood up in the second half, right? Really stood up in the second half. I'm very, very happy to see that go on. And I'm curious to see what the New Orleans Saints will look like next week because, by the way, Minnesota played Arizona a very tough game and won. Played Atlanta a very tough game and won. Now, Heineke is the starter for Atlanta. I was never a big, Desmond Ridder supporter, but Josh Dobbs came in, was 20 for 30, 2 TDs. He was efficient, right? And then that defense came in and played a pretty good game for Minnesota. Not sure how much y'all watched it, but even though they gave up 28 points, it was a solid game. Definitely can't go into this game next week thinking that there's a damaged Vikings team that you can just walk over because I do not think that's the case. But you've got a very winnable game next week, just like you had one today. Charles Bird, 24-24 with the Bucs and Falcons going down. This is awesome. Taysom and 5 turnovers. Who dat and God bless. Now, to Godfather's point, says it's not like we have the Ravens defense from 2000, but here I sit victorious with my New Orleans Saints, a team that forced 5 turnovers, a team that's actually in the top of the league in pass yards allowed, a team that's in the top of the league in turnovers forced, a team that the one thing that they don't do well that I screamed at them to go after, pass rush. And what did they do to compensate? They started blitzing, especially green dog blitzes, to make up for that. Hence, Mario Davis's forced fumble. Now, I will sit here and argue with you in agreement that the New Orleans Saints pass rush has not been what it needs to be. Shout out to Carl Granish, who had a good game. But as a whole, this unit is not a high-end unit right now. They're just not. Okay? I'm not trying to be a hater, but they're not. They are middle of the road. They're averaging 2-ish sacks a game. 2-ish sacks a game is about 35 sacks in a season. That's not good. Good teams are getting about 50 sacks a season. All right, so just give you a number. Good NFL teams are averaging about 3 sacks a game. That's about what a good team does. The New Orleans Saints defensive line is not doing that right now. And there's been a trend where in the first 3 or 4 years, Dennis Allen blitzed a lot. In the past 3 years, he doesn't really blitz much at all. And I think at some point, you've got these guys like Paulson Adebo, who absolutely shined and showed out today, did fantastic. You've got these guys like Marshawn Lattimore, who's a true number one, shined, showed out today. You're going to have to start putting them on islands and taking more risk if you're going to beat the good teams, right? Because the Bears are a 2-6 team coming into this. I'm not about to pretend that the Saints just beat the Philadelphia Eagles, because they didn't. But they did win a game they had to win. And honestly, that's all that matters. So, how about Carr averaging less than 2 TDs a game? I mean, that's what his career's basically been. So I don't have a problem with that. My issue with Derek Carr would be if he was suddenly a turnover machine. Derek Carr gave you 2 TDs a day, and honestly, you had 3 TD passes. He could have thrown that one if they really wanted him to. I mean, because they could have had Taysom Hill, Saunders in the background. They could have made that same play and then a Y leak to Juwan in the back. I don't honestly care, because I don't see, and I never have seen Derek Carr as a top guy, right? Nobody, the New Orleans Saints don't see Derek Carr as a top 5 quarterback. I don't see Derek Carr as a top 5 quarterback, so I don't really care. If the man can throw 70% of his passes and 2 TDs in a clean game, which is exactly what Derek Carr did today. Look at what Derek Carr did today. He averaged 6.2 yards per attempt, lots of checkdowns in the second half, 200 yards, 73% completion, 108 quarterback rating, 2 TDs. I'll take that. Thank you. Yep. Sign his check. Because what he's been doing over the past month, you look at the stats over Derek Carr past 4 weeks. This is actually the first time in 4 weeks he hasn't thrown for over 300 yards. Over the past 4 weeks, he's combined for 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns? Something like that, right? Mr. Wright says, I don't think Juwan is wide open with Carr at quarterback. I think he is, Mr. Wright, because the whole idea is a concept called Y leak. So if you're still having Carr in the backfield with Saunders, and you can have a split backfield with Saunders and Hill, you're still going to fake in motion to that right side. The design was, and maybe we can show this on a film set. The design is always Y leak. Like, yes, Blink was actually at the goal line for a potential route. Like, he ran a route, but it was always designed to leak out Juwan Johnson out the back, which is exactly, by the way, what the Chicago Bears did the entire first half with Cole Kmet. You're wondering, how is Cole Kmet so wide freaking open? How does he keep getting touchdown passes? Y leak. The Saints simply flipped the table and gave the Chicago Bears the exact same thing that they were giving them. I'm okay with that, right? I'm cool with that. And I guess it just comes down to expectations. Now, if I want to put laurels on a quarterback who just did something amazing, y'all give a shout out to C.J. Stroud, who went 30 of 42 for 470 yards and 5 TDs to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thank you so much, C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. I remember when we played Houston and we lost to Houston, everybody talking, man, Houston's such a bad team. How could that happen? I'm just going to sip my little drink real quick and talk about how good a West Coast offense can be. It tastes real good to watch a good West Coast offense operate. So, yeah, was it a pretty win? No. But was it a win? Yes. And are your New Orleans Saints division leaders? Man, y'all better be excited about that. Y'all better be going into Monday as a victory Monday, just loving it. And then you have an opportunity to go 7-4. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. 6-4 next week. And then you have the bye, where hopefully you get healthy. And then you end starting with the Falcons in week 12, who are also coming off a bye. Then week 13, you got the Lions, which I think is the toughest match left on your schedule. Week 14, the Panthers. Week 15, the Giants. Week 16, the Rams. Week 17, the Bucs again. And then finally, week 18, the Falcons. Ceremoniously so, almost. New Orleans did exactly what they needed to do today. And I think as a Saints fan, it's disingenuous to not be excited. We always want to win 40-2, right? We always do. And I still, days later, a little salty, the Saints didn't make some level of movement to go after another pass rusher. They stuck with what they had. Now, Mickey Loomis did come out and say that they made calls about acquiring guys. But they haven't done it. If somebody asked what the Minnesota Vikings defense ranked coming into this game. I don't know what they ranked today because obviously the weekend's not over. Coming into this game, they were 11th in yards allowed, 15th in points allowed. The Minnesota offense was the bread and butter of what made that O'Connell's team so good. And obviously losing Kirk Cousins makes that much more difficult. And now using Josh Dobbs. But hey, Josh Dobbs, you know what that man can do, right? Anybody ever watch Josh Dobbs? He can move with his feet. So we'll worry about that Thursday. Like, we'll bring it up. But last year, I think he had like 300 yards rushing from the quarterback position. I'm just letting you know he can. Now, I'm not saying that he's like a Lamar Jackson type runner, and he's definitely not even a runner to the point of Bagent, who went 8 for 70. I am saying that he will move out of a pocket, and he will run for a first down. So the New Orleans Saints have got things to clean up. Please don't take me giving these positives out as saying the Saints are perfect or even a great team right now, because they're not. They're not. But they're a winning team. And that's the key. They're a winning team right now. The New Orleans Saints are a winning football club. They've got things to clear up on offense and defense. I hate for multiple times this season, the offense with a lead got super conservative. They stopped trying to be aggressive. They stopped trying to attack the middle of the field. They stopped trying to get those shot plays. Where was, and maybe when we go through the all 22, we'll see a difference. Where was that, Yankee concept to attack downfield and have Rashid Shaheed flying for a 50-yard TD? Where was, a Mills concept to beat quarters? Where was Forverse? Where was these opportunities? We'll see if on tape they simply got closed off. Maybe Chicago just demanded we weren't going to lose that way. But it feels like the New Orleans Saints, when they get a lead, they need to continue to keep their foot on the gas. Dennis Allen, I feel like, does. I feel like Pete maybe took it off a little bit here in the second half because the Saints offense did a lot of great things early on. We just need to see it be consistent. But at the end of the day, you won a football game, man. And that's got to be huge. And also, shout out to Paulson Adebo. Shout out to Paulson Adebo. You are a winning football team. And I can't speak what happens next week. I can't speak what happens last week. Nito, good to see you, man. Appreciate you showing the love. But I can tell you something right now. The first time you've been able to say this in the middle of a season for a while, the Saints are a winning football team. Like, we're not talking about starting 1-0 and 2-0 and saying we're a winning football team. You are over halfway through a season, your team has a winning record. I'm not saying they look great. Not my argument, but I'm saying you're in it. Like, right now, you control your destiny. You're in it. You have a shot, and you have the schedule, and you have the players. Let's see what happens, right? Buddy says Saints barely beat a 2-win trash Chicago team. Bring on Philly, Cowboys, Lions, San Fran. Nobody's being delusional. Nobody said that, right? What is the key every year? We talk about this. What's the key every year? Win your division. To make the playoffs, then you go from there. Because, yes, if you play like you did today against the Philadelphia Eagles, you probably lose. Now, I will say this. I'll take the Saints squad over Dallas any day because Dallas can't win in high pressure to save their damn lives, and they haven't been able to do it for decades. And I think that's a problem at the top. We talk about problems in New Orleans being like, well, maybe Dennis Allen's not the guy. Or, well, maybe Mickey Loomis not the guy. I, honest to God, and I'll say this right here on this podcast, y'all can clip it, do whatever. Chicago Bears have just as much chance to beat the New Orleans Saints as the freaking Dallas Cowboys because I don't believe the Dallas Cowboys ever win a championship again with Jerry Jones. I just don't. I believe high pressure is going to come and they will continue to collapse. That is a personal belief. Truly is. Like, I think here's my true thinking of the Saints. The Saints maybe make the playoffs by winning the division. They play the Dallas Cowboys week 1 in the wild card. They manage to beat Dallas. We all get excited, and then they get crushed in the divisional round. That is a very realistic possibility for you as a Saints fan. But damn it, I don't care. You know what I care about? I care that it's week 9 and my team has a winning record and my team is 1 game up on the division. That's all I really give a whoop about at the moment. I don't care that Alvin Kamara's rushing totals is like 3.5 yards per carry right now because I know he has an impact in the game. I don't really care that Derek Carr is averaging 200 yards passing and he's only got, 10 TDs to his name so far. I don't really care. What I care about is that the New Orleans Saints are 5-4, that they are atop the division with a full game lead, And I'm actually getting to enjoy football, whereas this same time last year, let me remind you, Saints fans, because I can't tell you next week's game's guaranteed. I am worried about the Minnesota Vikings. I am. Please don't let me fool you. I am worried about the Minnesota Vikings. But by week 9 last year, your New Orleans Saints had won 3 games. 3. One of those was the blowout win against the Raiders, which most people don't even want to count. You started off 1-0 with a really crazy, last-second win against Atlanta. You got killed by Tampa. You then lost to the Panthers, and everybody's like, why would you lose to the Panthers? The Panthers suck. Then you lose to a good Minnesota team. You play them well, but you lose. You somehow go beat Seattle. Then you get absolutely just heartbreak loss to the Bengals. Destroyed by Cardinals. What? The Saints found ways to lose last year. 9 weeks into the season, you had won 3 games. And by the way, week 9 last year is when a good football team in the Baltimore Ravens said, sit down. And we sat down. And then you had a string of wins at the end of the season to make you feel like there's a little bit of hope, where the Saints won 3 of their last 4, right? Because don't forget about that whole egg you laid in Pittsburgh. This team is a little different this year. And I hope that difference continues. Week 9, you're 5-4 on top of the division. You're healthier, knock on wood, hope that stays the same. And you're playing better than what you were last year. Josh has easier schedule. You can't control who's on your schedule, man. All you can do is win. All you can do is win. All you can do is win. And the big key is you're healthier. And you're finally gelling. You're looking better. The offense over the past 4 weeks looks so much different than the offense for the first month. And I mean drastically different, y'all. And what's crazy is that drastic difference, they're not even great. They're really not. Their offense is not playing great right now. But they just look good. And I just want to remind you that good teams lose to bad teams every week. Every week, good teams lose to bad teams. Chiefs lost to the Broncos 24-9 last week. Do y'all forget that game? Did y'all forget that happened? Or are we just being selective memory here? Did we forget? So all it takes is to get to the dance, baby. That's why I'm celebrating the wins. Sure, are they pretty? Guess what? Most defensive teams don't win pretty football games, y'all. They don't. They just don't win pretty football games. Go back to the Saints past. I know I'm a little old or a little young technically for this, but go back to the Dome Patrol days. How many of those wins were pretty? How many of them were pretty? Now, for those that got to witness them live, you tell me. But let me go ahead and tell you. The New Orleans Saints scored they went 12-4 in 1992. We're talking about the height of the Dome Patrol. They won a game against Atlanta 10-7. The Rams 13-10. The Lions 13-7. They beat the Jets 20-0. Then they beat the then Redskins, now Commanders, 20-3. They beat the Falcons 22-14. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-21. They beat the Dolphins 24-13. Does it sound familiar? Defensive teams generally don't win sexy. I'm sorry. Defensive teams generally aren't out here winning 40-10. Do I want that to happen? Absolutely. I'll take my wins how I can get them, baby. And right now, my New Orleans Saints are winners. And that's all that matters to me. Who dat to every single one of you. Who dat to every single one of you. I love it. I love it. T-Rex says, I don't want to hear easy schedule from Saints fans when we lost to the Packers and Jordan Love. Yeah, even then, the Saints have had a quote-unquote easy schedule and still managed to lose. But that's just the nature of football, right? Personally, my opinion coming into this week, I would have said, now this is just me, that Miami was a better team than Kansas City. But Kansas City won, right? I would have said that Tennessee's a better overall team than Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh won. Now, Baltimore beat the brakes off Seattle, so that means something. Cleveland literally shut out Arizona. And then the Rams, who I would have said are better than Green Bay, got beat 20-3. Now, granted, they've got quarterback issues over there in LA. But at this point, it seems everybody's got quarterback issues. So, all I'm saying is, Saints fans, enjoy your victory. Enjoy your win. Embrace it. Was it pretty? No, it wasn't. Does the Saints offense still got to get some things together? Absolutely. Absolutely. They did some great things in the first half. In the second half, it's like, who are these guys? Right? But the improvements are there, incremental each week. The past month of football, you've seen a better Saints team. I would argue that, put the Colts game aside where you went 38-27, which was a really good win. I love that one. But I would argue the big one was Jaguars versus Saints, because the Jaguars to me were the better football team, and yet that was last minute. They had a shot. And you can go all the way back to the Texans loss. The Saints have been improving as a team, because if you go back to the beginning of the season, I just want to remind some of y'all before we wrap up the show today. The Packers lost 18-17. That's what bad teams do. That's what bad teams do. That's what bad teams do. Getting absolutely whooped by the Buccaneers 26-9. That's what bad teams do. They're not doing that the past 4 weeks. Even their losses are competitive, real losses. Like, they're not giving things away. And I agree with the commenters, says we can't underestimate Dobbs with Vikings, because I'm not T-Rex. If you remember, like 10 minutes ago, I actually just said, hey, look, that man can move. And what's the number one thing the Saints offense is, or Saints defense is struggling right now? Quarterbacks who can get extra yards and get first down with their feet. So I'm not trying to sleep on the Vikings, because also, I don't care who is quarterback, the Vikings literally give this defense probably their toughest secondary task in terms of corners covering wide receivers this year. I love Justin Jefferson, man. I love Addison. I love everything that they have. Now, obviously, Jefferson's not going to be a factor there, but you still got Hawkinson, you got Addison, and then you got Madison out of the backfield. I mean, they got weapons, right? And if Justin Jefferson was there, whew, God Lord, that would be heckin' scare. So don't sleep on them next week. We'll cover this Thursday. But yeah, a win's a win. Matthew Richmond, who dat? First place, show and growth, room to grow, ability to grow. I agree with you, Matt, and I love it. Who dat to you, man? Appreciate it. Amy says, Carr didn't suck today. Let's be honest, he didn't. I think Carr played a good game. It just wasn't great, but he played a good game. Can you tell Pete Carmichael not to do quarterback sneaks with Carr when we got Taysom Hill? So T-Rex, we explained a little bit earlier. I'm pretty sure Taysom Hill wasn't on the field, so they had to do it with Carr, else the defense wouldn't be able to do a substitution. I don't actually have a problem with Derek Carr being the guy that do that. They executed that horribly. That should be something that on Tuesday they do a lot of revision and walkthrough on. I think they need to really take a look at that one. I don't mind that play call at all. But if Taysom Hill was on the sideline like I remember he was, if they bring him on the field, the Chicago defense gets to make an alteration as well, because you can't substitute on one team and not allow the other team an opportunity to substitute. So because of that, is what it is. And I'm kind of fine with how that played out in terms of the call. I hate the execution, but I was happy with the call. I have no problem with the call. So who remembers the fumble for the punt in the first place ever in Saints history? Yeah, Akeem drops the ball. I remember it as a kid growing up. All right, y'all, look, if y'all don't know, we're going to bust out the film study for y'all this week. We try to put out at least 2 film studies a week. I'll be honest, we're probably going to do another one on Paulson Adebo. The dude is just balling out, and he had a career game. But we're going to cover some things, more things that y'all want to know. You need to let me know in our Discord or on Twitter at RevDeuceWinham. You can follow me. You can hit me up. Everybody's welcome to message me. I did not realize, by the way, on Twitter that my DMs were set to close. I have now set those to open. So if anybody wants to shoot me a message, feel free to do so. If you want to support the channel, I can't do stuff like this without the amazing support like y'all. We got PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. I can't make film studies. I can't do this without y'all doing what y'all do, supporting the channel, liking the video, sharing it to other Who Dat Nations. And if you got $2, $5, $20, or even $1 million, hit me up with those tip links and PayPal. Thank you for all your continued support and patronage. Y'all all mean the world to me. Who Dat, God bless. We'll catch y'all on Tuesday and in our first film study of the week, which I'm looking forward to. Coming off a win. I always am. Who Dat, God bless. Catch you on the next one. Deuces. That's me.